So when I was pursuing an acting career, I was a terrible waitress. So in order to support myself, I became a Marilyn Monroe lookalike. There were a lot of Marilyn Monroe impersonators in Los Angeles. And they were all very, very different. Some of them portrayed her as kind of crazy, and some of them portrayed her as mean, and some of them portrayed her as stupid. And I always portrayed her as the girl in the 7-Year Itch because I felt like that was the kindest Marilyn. This is called About the Author. At a reading some years back, I was introduced as the Marilyn Monroe of poetry. Hank, the young host, hadn't known I'd once been a Marilyn Monroe look-alike impersonator. In platinum wig and white halter dress and rhinestones galore, I had sat on laps of corporate execs, kissed scarlet signatures onto bald spots, waved rubied fingertips from convertibles at classic Cadillac exhibitions. Happy birthday, Mr. President. In faux furs, I'd been seasick at the prow of yachts. I'd popped out of brown paper packages at philatelic conventions. Oh, you don't look like philatelist. True. I had come near to causing riots at gas stations, breathlessly asking for directions, stood on the shoulder of the freeway with a busted clutch, opera gloves, and skin-tight satin tormented by the wind of rushing cars. Nor had Hank seen my theater performance, naked under white terry towel, doing Hamlet's famed soliloquy on an onyx black stage, swigging from a bottle of Dom Perignon and pondering, to be or not to be? That is the question. The audience got the humor until I pulled out a vial of sleeping pills. The aging of her body was her betrayal, her tragedy corpse-like. I was carried off the set by a stagehand. Well, it was titled Marilyn's Last Night on Earth. Like me, Norma Jean Baker never knew her real daddy, and that's where the similarity ended. She had sandbagged emptiness with attention, worshipped linguistic precision of Walt Whitman, found a razor-sharp intellect an aphrodisiac, ached for the concrete certainty of Albert Schweitzer, was bent in half in agony every 28 days, longed futilely for pregnancy, believed she could not keep love unless she was perfect. She believed she was nothing without her mask, her persona, which she could turn on and off at will. The Marilyn Monroe of poetry? Was that a compliment? I had to ask, why the Marilyn intro? Honestly, yes. Well, he said, you've got a hell of a wiggle and a great rack. Aye, there's the rub. Thank you. This next is written in the voice of Marilyn Monroe. It's a persona piece, and it's just titled Marilyn Monroe. I never knew my real father. But when I was growing up, my mother always had a lot of boyfriends, so I always had a lot of uncles. There was Uncle Billy, Uncle Ned, Uncle Al, and then there was Uncle Frankie. He was special. He'd run to the door when I'd run to the door when he came over, and he'd scoop me up and swing me around and give me a big kiss and a hug. I was 10. I was so happy when they got married and he came to live with us. He stopped picking me up and hugging me, but I didn't mind. I would do special things for him. I would shine his good shoes with smelly blue shoe polish until they were so shiny, he'd say he could see himself in them. I'd brush his hair sometimes when he was sitting watching the game. His hair smelled so good. My hands would smell like him, so I wouldn't wash them. I can still smell him. When we'd go grocery shopping, he'd walk up in front of me, pushing the cart, and he'd hold his hand behind him, and I'd hold on to it, and we'd finish shopping like that. Once, when they were having one of their fights, he said, "She's sick. You want to know how sick your mother is? When we got married, she told me to stay away from you. That's how sick." And then, one day he was gone. My mother said he had taken off in his pink and white Mercury for parts unknown. So let me tell you, laddie, though I know that you're perfectly swell, that my heart belongs to my daddy, 'cause my daddy treats it so well. And this last poem is, it's called The Coming of a Certain Age. A certain age is a euphemism we use for older women. It's different for every woman, but it really is the age when they become invisible. And unfortunately, Marilyn Monroe never had a chance to make it to that age, but it was a huge fear of hers. This poem also has end words from a line from Mark Strand's The Coming of Light. This is the coming of a certain age. She becomes more ghost-like each day. Even her footsteps make barely a sound, just this soft patter, almost nothing. A big cat late for the kill, arriving after the delicacies, the heart, breasts, and thighs are gone, leaving only bones to content her. She sees herself consisting not of flesh and frame, but layer upon layer of memory, the strata of time upon time, an airy, eccentric body near to undetectable, a wraith lacking vital shine. Unlike her blossoming days, she'd enter a room and the temperature would rise. Then she was tomorrow's candle, impatient for a match, impatient to dust off the stars within her and emit a light that flares into the little known, the unnameable, into any tomorrow. Now, taking in a breath, she lets out something like a sigh, sending not a prayer or demand, more a reconciliation up toward the heavens, whatever that might be. A warm exhale of hopes and defeats as though they were bouquets tossed by a bride. She throws another and another, free of expectation, the light within her igniting the air. Thank you.